This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about some pool emergencies that I've faced in the past, and also touch on some not so emergency type calls, but they are really things to be aware of that could happen on your pool route. Not super preventable, but awareness, I think, is important, that you know that this could be the problem and this could be something that you will face one day. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. First, I think anything that affects the customer's pool that they are concerned about, for the customer, that's an emergency. I'll explain that by just sharing this story. I got a call, pretty frantic call, that this customer is having the grandkids over for a pool party. It was in the middle of the week, and the kids were coming over, and there was algae in the pool. And I was just there, I think, 2 days prior to that. Of course, I didn't think there was algae in the pool, but they were panicking. They didn't want the grandkids in the pool with algae. So I went over to the pool. I went out of my way, went there, and on the first step of the pool, yes, there was a strip of algae, maybe about 2 inches long and about 1 or 2 centimeters wide. And then in the deep end on the bench there was actually a little tiny 1 inch by 1 centimeter algae bloom, I guess, or outbreak, as the customer said. So I brushed it with my steel brush, and I didn't say nothing about it. But that's an example of an emergency in a customer's eye, which really was nothing. It was really irritating, but I took care of it. And this happens all the time out there with people, where something is an emergency when it's really not. Now, a real emergency, I've had those happen. I got a call from a customer saying that their equipment burned down and almost caught the whole backyard on fire. Strange, I was like, okay, yeah, the equipment burned down. But true to life, I went to the account, and the pump had caught on fire, burning the plumbing, the valves, everything around. The heater was actually scorched pretty badly. Filter was burned, but it wasn't compromised. And it was one of those things where it was shocking to see that, and all of the grass around there, the weeds and everything were burned. But a neighbor had seen the fire. The neighbor behind them had seen the fire and smoke, and he called the fire department, and they got there really fast to put it out. And I wondered, what happened to this particular pump, because I've seen motors catch on fire or spark before. That's nothing unusual, but how did this thing become this inferno that burned the equipment area? Thankfully, no one got hurt, and the neighbor saw that. So the electrician told me that there was actually a triple failure. It was a really old panel, and what happened was, normally when the motor gets really hot, it's going to turn itself off. You've seen that happen on your pool route, where it just doesn't turn on, it clicks off, and I've seen them spark and flame at that point sometimes when you try to turn them back on. And there's a GFCI and a breaker that should normally trip when that happens, if there's an overload. That did not happen. And then there's the panel breaker that should trip when something like this happens, and it did not trip either because it wasn't functioning properly. And so that triple failure caused that fire, which is unusual, but it can happen. And this is not the first time I've seen a motor pretty much catch on fire or burn itself out. And it can happen in extreme cases. I guess to prevent that, once you hear the bearings start to go out and you hear that loud noise from like the street, maybe approach the customer to get that replaced before you actually have a potential fire hazard, and explain to them that, the motor's burning out. That's what we call it in the industry. The bearings are wearing out. It's burning out. It's making that noise. I would suggest replacing it because there is a potential for, sparks and flames coming out of the back. I've seen it happen before, so I would suggest a new motor or maybe a whole new pump. And that's not a scare tactic. That's something that I've seen happen, and this fire was like proof of this happening. And I don't think you're going to experience a triple failure like that, but it could happen. I've also had filter tanks crack and explode on the customers. This is something that is really dangerous, but a crack in the filter lid can expand very rapidly, and it could become a dangerous situation. So if there's any cracks in the filters, address those immediately and tell the customer that could expand at any moment. There's no way of telling. But I've seen a small little crack or even a pinhole in a stainless steel filter become a big emergency pretty much within a few days. So it's something that has happened before where the crack expanded rapidly to where all the water was draining out of the pool. And I have a picture of one of these. It was a 4000 series tank. I got to the stop. I don't know where the customer was, but the pool was running and water was shooting out the side of this filter. It's a really cool picture, and I've posted it before. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, this can't happen, can it? And it does happen when a filter tank cracks and expands. So that's been a problem before. So just make sure that if you notice any cracks in the filter lid, that you address that immediately before they expand and become a dangerous situation. Now, I've had customers deadhead their filter before. I've had filters where a heater part broke off and got stuck in the check valve, causing the return line not to operate. I've had other people in my group where they had problems with the return lines collapsing. Sometimes the salt cell gets so full of calcium and debris that it causes a lot of back pressure. What's this back pressure I'm talking about? Well, the filter gauge has a standard PSI where the filter operates at. If you have a cartridge filter, a four quad type cartridge filter, that's probably about 20 psi. A D filter may operate as high as 25 psi. When it gets to 30 psi, it's probably dirty. You have to clean it or backwash it. But I'm talking about when you turn on the pump and that pressure gauge jumps rapidly to like 50 or 60 psi, and you can actually physically see the tank expanding. I've seen this happen. It's really scary, but really, it was a Stay-Right System 3 where the heater part broke off and was clogging the Jandy valve. I turned on the pool when I got there, and you can actually see the System 3 black tank with all those clamps on it. The top of it like expanded slightly. You can actually physically see it like bulging a little bit. The pressure gauge shot up to the maximum. Of course, I quickly turned that thing off immediately, and that was a dangerous situation. It was kind of weird because the pump was actually pulling water from the skimmer and it looked like it was fine, but there was no water returning to the pool, causing all that back pressure. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. Other times this will happen is if the Jandy valve, there's like, most pools have Jandy valves, and if that tab on the back of the valve breaks off, it can be over-rotated. And I've seen this happen where a customer is moving their pool and spa from pool to spa mode, that Jandy valve tab is broken, and they over-rotate it to where they actually deadhead the pump. That means that on that Jandy valve, which I don't like the way the Jandy valves have their writing on there, but that wide end on the Jandy valve actually says off on it. And then the handle actually is supposed to be on. And if you ever see the Jandy valve where the off part is actually blocking the turn right in front of the pump, that's deadheading it. And I've deadheaded the pumps when I had to clean a filter when the pool's below sea level, where the equipment's below the water line. So you can deadhead things like that. I also did it when I was cleaning a salt cell and it was also a little bit below the water. The pool was higher than the equipment and water would have gushed out. So you can deadhead it on purpose just by lifting the handle up and turning it. But sometimes they're done accidentally when that safety tab breaks off the Jandy valve. So I've had that happen as well. Of course, I can see that visually before I turn on the pump. But one time it happened when the customer had a water feature that was tied into the return line and that tab was broken and they actually deadheaded the return. Very dangerous. It was a clean and clear 420 square foot filter. I turned on the pool and again, you can see the lid bulging, visually. And I can see the pressure gauge go from 0 to like the maximum within like 1 or 2 seconds. Killed it right away. Found out the problem that the return line was deadheaded, and that could be a dangerous situation, even a fatal situation if that tank were to explode. It's like a bomb basically, and I've heard stories of them popping off the top of the filter and flying over the house and landing in the front yard. So definitely be very careful in that situation. Now let me cover some non-emergencies. I probably scared everyone to death here with all these stories. So there's some non-emergencies that are emergencies to you as a pool service provider. The number one emergency that I run into from my end is a customer that for some reason leaves their pool off all week, and you get there and it's got algae and it's turned green. It's something that is extremely irritating because it's going to happen to you for sure. They'll have a party, they'll turn their VS pump off by hitting the start-stop button, or they'll leave it in spa mode, which is equally as bad all week long. And this is something you have to deal with. Now, should you charge the customer for the cleanup and the extra chemicals? Well, it just really depends on, the extent of it. I would say that the first time it happens, I usually give them a pass if they're a long-term customer. But I really let them know that you have to make sure that if you turn your pool off, if it's a standalone VS pump, you have to turn it back on, because the next time this happens, I'll have to charge you for the cleanup. I did this as a courtesy. And if you leave it in spa mode all week, the pool's not circulating, and I'll have to charge you for that as well. And it's a judgment thing. You can charge them the first time if you want. But I usually let them slide because it's an accident. The customer didn't know any better. It's one of those things where on your end, showing up, you're like walking back there whistling, you're having a great day, and you get back there and then you have that kind of dramatic music playing, dun dun dun, and you see the pool and it's been off all week. You can tell right away because the top of the pool has all this scum on it and leaves and debris. Maybe the bottom is full of debris. Then you see all the algae in the pool. And this usually happens in the summertime when they're using it, unfortunately. So this is something that you're going to run into. So make sure that you make the customer aware that when they do turn their system off, or a lot of times they don't like the noise of the equipment while they're in the backyard. I get it. But if they do hit that stop button on the standalone VS pump, they have to re-engage it again for it to go back into the normal cycle that it's running. And it's one of those things that happens a lot. Now the spa pool mode thing happens quite often as well. And interestingly enough, this is something that the customer is just not aware of as well. I don't understand how they don't look in the backyard and see that their spa is on, but the pool is off all week. It's happened to me before, and it's probably going to happen to you as well. There's also situations where the valve actuator fails. If you have an automated system, the valve actuator that controls the pool and spa mode sometimes will fail, and then it'll drain the spa down, and the spa will be completely empty, and this causes the pump to run dry, and it also causes the pool not to function all week. So be aware of that also. That's nothing really the customer can do. They may have used their spa that day, and then they put it back in pool mode, but then that valve actuator doesn't move back into pool mode. Along with it, it stays in spa suction. And then you have the pool return with spa suction, and that will drain the spa down And I've gotten to accounts before where the spa is completely empty. Right away, I know the problem, that the valve actuator had failed. It stayed in spa suction, but the other valve turned back in the pool return, and thereby draining the spa down and allowing the pool to run, or I should say allowing the pool motor to run dry. And that's a big problem as well because it wasn't circulating. I don't know how the customer didn't see that either, but this has happened before a couple times where this has happened and the customer is not aware. I don't really think the customers go in their backyard during the week, to be honest with you, unless they're going to use the pool, especially in the summer here when it's like in the 90s. It's just not something they do. So that to me is something to be aware of, that, the valve actuator fails. They can't do much about it. The best way it fails is if it's in spa return in pool suction and nothing really happens to the pool except the spa spillway is activated all week long. Another one that I've had, and this is usually with equipment below the pool water line, and this can be a problem when there's a leak somewhere. It just kind of just exacerbates it since it's below the water line. The water is just gushing out. And I've had actually some strange instances where the pump lid has come off with pools below water level. And, these were Pentair whisper flows. And those pump lids are in there pretty good. So I made sure that when I had this ever happen, it happened at 2 accounts where I guess it was air in the line and there was so much pressure that it actually knocked the pump lid loose. So what I do now whenever I have a pool below sea level, especially when it's a Pentair pump, and those lids are actually really good, I'll take a rubber mallet and I'll make sure I tap it to make sure that lid's on there really good. And then in this situation, I put a cinder block on top of the pump lid so that if it does have some kind of air back pressure, that cinder block will hold that lid down, and it hasn't been a problem since I did that little trick. Kind of weird, but it does happen. And speaking of equipment leaking, if you have a Pentair 300 offline chlorinator, those black tubings, I just wish they were more robust. They're like the Achilles tendon, or Achilles heel, I should say, of that system. So if that black tubing starts to crack, which invariably happens when the sun hitting it all day, that black tubing can actually crack to the point if someone hits it, like a landscaper or even an animal like a dog walking by hits that black tubing, it can crack it and it'll pop off. So what happens at that point is the pool is running, water is shooting out of that black tube, and the pool is draining down. Now it may get down to the skimmer line and it may stop because the pump runs dry. But if you have the UFO device in there, the flow diverter valve, I call it the UFO device, and it actually collapses down, and now the pool is sucking from the main drain, that water will get low enough to where it's a big concern. And I've had it before where the customer calls me panicking, a real emergency, saying, hey, my pool is down 2 feet. I get over there as quickly as I can. Sure enough, the 300 offline chlorinator tubing is broken, water's shooting out, and the pool is down 2 feet because that float valve diverter activated. And so that is a real emergency and something that does happen, and it's going to happen to you as well. So be aware. Sometimes when I'm working on that chlorinator, changing out the little ball valve on the bottom, the elbow on the bottom, I'll check the tubing by pushing my finger on it. I carry extra tubing in my truck. So check those often because they'll crack. And you can tell they're brittle because they won't be like that jet black. They'll be like a really gray-black color, and that's when they're wearing out. So change those if you can to avoid that kind of problem. Bottom line, there are some emergencies that you can prevent, others that you really can't, but they're going to happen. And to be aware of them, I think the most dangerous situations are when the return line is blocked or the pump is deadheaded. That could cause the pool filter to actually explode and cause a fatality. So just be aware of that. And I think a lot of the equipment fires can be prevented by making sure that the pool motor, when it's getting old, is replaced. But things happen. Customers don't put the valves back in the right mode or leave the pool off. And these are things you're going to have to deal with out there on your service route. Looking for the podcast, you can, of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel Monday through Friday. And that will give you a new podcast every day there. Or go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, and click on the podcast icon. You can download over 1,700 episodes and listen at your leisure. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.